episode, we're going to look at multiple inheritance. So we've seen basic inheritance or single inheritance already, and now we look at multiple inheritance. So what is multiple inheritance? A class can actually inherit properties from more than one class. So we can have multiple superclasses, and each of those can give functionality, both methods and attributes, to a subclass underneath. This is called multiple inheritance. It sounds simple, and it is simple. It's very, very simple in terms of how to do it, in Python in particular, but it is nonetheless considered extremely controversial by programmers. The reason really it's considered controversial is because even though it's easy to do, sometimes it's very hard to trace or understand where all the functions are coming from. Because if you've got multiple parents, we'll say, then what happens is you end up with confusion as to where a particular method is coming from. So many programmers advise to avoid multiple inheritance like the plague. I'm not that seriously concerned about it as others do. As long as you document quite clearly where you're inheriting from, it's not as big a problem as people make it out to be. But nonetheless, just so that you're aware, it is considered somewhat controversial, or just some IT companies try to avoid it strongly. So just so you know that. In Python, I suppose the simplest form or the simplest superclass you can create is called a mixin class. And a mixin class is one that's created specifically as a superclass, just so that its features can be inherited and doesn't really have a function in and of itself other than to be there for inheritance. So if we look at an example, let's say we want to go back to our contacts list again. So we have a name and an email address in our contact list. And let's say we wanted to add a function on, which was to email somebody. So let's say we want to send an email to each person in the contact list, their email address. Now, sending an email is such a general task that probably should be a class in and of itself, and there's no point adding it as simply a method onto the contact class. It makes more sense to create a new class in and of itself. So we could create a mixin class for that. And it looks something like this. So the new class is called MailSender, and it has one method in it called sendMail. And it sends to the current object's email address a message. So the self is the current object, and the message is whatever message you want. So I haven't actually put in how to set up a mail server or do that. All I've said is just print sending email to, and whoever the email address is. And that's our basic. Okay, so let's imagine that class sends an email to the current object. All right, so then if we want to create a new class now that inherits both from the contact list and the mail sender. To create a new class using multiple inheritance in Python, it is as simple as this. It's disturbingly simple. All we do is we create a class. It's called emailable contacts, and it takes in two parameters. It takes in the contact class and the mail sender class, and then it does stuff. Check it out, dudes. To do multiple inheritance, all you do is specify the parent classes from which you want to inherit to in brackets, and that's it. That's all you need to do. It's so simple, it's unbelievable. Many other object-oriented programming languages like Smalltalk or C# or Java or C++ make this slightly more complex, whereas in Python, simplicity is the core of Python. Therefore, it's so simple. We might even say defining in class multiple inheritance works the same way as calling a method with multiple parameters. That's all it is. If we want to test our program, test our emailable contact class, let's instantiate an object called E, and it's equal to emailable contact, and we'll put in a name, John Smith, and an email address. And then if I do e.send_mail, which is the only method in our contactable class, emailable contact rather, and the message is hello test mail, it'll say sending a mail to John Smith's email address. So it'll send that message to John Smith's email address. We haven't actually put in the functionality to do that, but this is doing it in the sense that it's printing out that message. So we can see emailable contact takes in information from the contact class and takes information in from the the email in class, and it allows us to do that, which is really sophisticated stuff. So that is multiple inheritance. Just to say a little bit more about it for a minute, as I said, it is considered a little bit controversial. There are multiple other ways we could have implemented that process. We could have just added the email stuff into the contacts list, or just had the email stuff as a subclass of the contact list. There's multiple ways of doing it, but in examples like this, multiple inheritance is a nice way of achieving it. So I wouldn't write it off completely, although some people do. It's in your bag of tools anyway. Thanks very much. We'll see you on the next episode.